Well, it's one way of looking at it is that, the TTP is effective and it can function anywhere it wants to. It has the liberty of action, freedom of movement. The other way of looking at it is that a lot of terrorism that is happening in Pakistan and violence, it is being politicized. So it is a product of a political process and not a product of terrorism itself. Well, let me explain the overall strategic um, uh, posture. At the time when we were operating, that was somewhere around about 2007 onwards, at that particular time, we were fighting for our survival. That is how bad the situation was. People tend to forget. The Indus Highway was shut down. The provincial government was shifting to Ahmedabad. Pay allowances were moved by helicopter. There were no-go areas in all the tribal belt. Bajor was flying a Afghan flag, and the airport was shut down in Peshawar, and I can carry on and on about it. Excuse me. But today, regardless of what you see, the terrorists are fighting for their survival. It is a big difference. Now, in this fight that we see that's going on, there are a lot of flaws, there are a lot of policy failures, there are a lot of successes, there are a lot of politicization of things. So it's not so simple that you can put your finger on it and give a military analysis of what is happening. It is happening because of a number of things and it's very complicated. Well, we have to get into the genesis of terrorism itself. We can't just talk about terrorism on the surface. We need to get down to its foundation and basis. Terrorism itself, um, it really starts with the grievance of some people in a certain region. And that grievance is left unaddressed. And when it's not addressed by the government, it grows. And when it grows, it is exploited by hostile agencies from outside. That's where the external influence comes in. So money, weapons, training, resources, they start moving in. And as the movement starts enlarging, this is how you get this terrorism. And later on, the same terrorism becomes into insurgency. So this is how it unfolds. It's a phenomena which is there. Look, nobody in the world has yet defined terrorism. Rosalind Higgins of the World Court, Chief Justice, explained that, it is not, it cannot be, it has no legal significance. The term has no legal significance. In Kashmir, you will be calling him a freedom fighter. Somebody will be calling him a terrorist. So these things are very flexible, and most terrorism in the world are state-sponsored. Look at what's happened in Syria. The president of Syria was a non-state actor. He's today a president of a country supported by the United States. So these things are politicized at every level, at international level, at the regional level, at the local level. I'm not in a position to give you a professional assessment of incidents. The reason being that I don't have access to that information. So I don't know why a certain thing happened or it did not happen. I can give you the principles of it. In an IBO operation, suffering casualties yourself amounts to stupidity because it means you yourself identified the target, you went there and got killed. It's a silly thing to do. So I can't really comment upon incidents because the incidents are a product of some plan or some reality on ground which I'm not aware of. Well, there is a breakdown in governance, and it's broken down in every field. If you have smuggling on the borders, then there's cross-border movement. How do you control that? You can't say that I'm going to only smuggle diesel. A lot of other things come through. And there's a lot of movement related to funds, foreign funding, which moves in also in that way. Now, we had a certain plan with NACTA. NACTA was an authority and it was supposed to be a coordinator. I think it needs to be upgraded to executive capacity. And we need to stop exposing the army to terrorism and bring in something in between. And that can also be a secondment from the army. I've always recommended this. And they can be rotated through trained troops, but they should not be the army itself because terrorism is a dirty business. So you require a nectar to be fully empowered. But it's not happening because everybody everywhere is involved indirectly or directly with corruption, with bad governance, with there's no law. I mean, when there's no law and there's nothing functional, how can you operate, under what system? Uh, I don't know about the KP, I live here, but if you compare Balochistan and KP, there's a big difference within the violence between both. So one can't justify blaming a provincial government at one end and not blame the provincial government at the other end. There is something seriously, there's a lot of hypocrisy in that whole thing. But the fact of the matter is, look, I remember in 2007-8, the governor was Owais Ghani, Hoti was the chief minister, I was the IGFC. I used to report to them. I used to report to both of them. There was a system, and that system was through the government. When we entered into KP, when I brought in 14 Division in 2007 early, we had to take permission from MMA. The Maulvis, who were very reluctant to give us that permission, but we did. We came under Article 245. So there was a way of moving and there was a way of operating, etc. First, we secured the legality of our presence. And after securing the legality of our presence, we reached out to the people and ensured that the people were empowered by our presence. So this is how there was a different. Now to blame people, etc. I don't think we should be doing that. The people need to be assisted, to be helped. Governments need to be helped. There's the way to do it. Right now, you tell me, where does a common man go to complain about anything? If he wants to complain, where does he go? So does he go across the border to somebody else, or does he go to our own government? There's no cell. There is no complaint system. There is no legal, constitutional, administrative method in which he can register a complaint as a relevant person of this country. So just blaming people, it doesn't make any difference. There's a reality on ground, you can see it. I can't speak for the establishment because I really don't know what they're doing or not doing. But what I can tell you is that if I were to correct the situation today, right now, the first thing I would do is establish complaint cells all over and empower the local bodies and try and bring the local politics into play so that the people become relevant to the country. They become irrelevant. And the complaint cells actually would be a shoulder for them to cry on and somewhere to go. Right now, that they can't find any justice, they can't find any fairness, they can't find any recognition, they can't even be, they're not significant anymore. So this is what I would recommend. See, first of all, you have to understand that why is there terrorism in Pakistan? One of the major reasons why you have a state which is susceptible to terrorism is because it's nuclear power. It's a nuclear power. And a nuclear power, conventional war, is a very difficult thing to do because you might cross a threshold which you don't want to. And therefore, you have to find ways and means to continue war by other methods. So, what Pakistan is facing right now is a war by other methods. But why? Because of alignment with China, the CPEC, the possibility of Pakistan becoming a regional dynamo. This affects other regional countries, and they will obviously not allow CPEC to come through, whether it is coming through GB or whether it is going through Balochistan, and you're going to have a problem. Now, how that problem manifests itself, that you are seeing and in the form of terrorism today. Now, this is not an excuse. Pakistan should be able to handle it, and it should be able to handle it properly. And it's not a difficult thing to handle. It's something in which you need to bring in the rule of law, you need to bring in the justice system, you need to bring in the constitution, and unless you remember one thing, terrorism or insurgency or any kind of violence in this provincial or local area is always a contest of constitutional legitimacy. So that's where the conflict is. So if you have to establish your writ through this, you can't do it just by going around killing people. How many will you kill? No, actually, there are two, three things mixed up in this question. It was not our war was basically at a time when Musharraf was the president, and this took on a special slogan, and I never agreed with it at that time, and I never agreed with it because they were foreigners in the KP area and in the FATA area, and they were told to disarm, register themselves, and either live peacefully or then leave the country. They refused all three things and said, we will continue to do jihad from your country. How can a country allow other people to wage war from its territories, autonomously? It's not possible. So that was a different conflict altogether. The conflict today is meaningless, mindless. It has no, as far as the KP is concerned, it has no direction. There's a weird kind of objective that, return FATA back to its original status. When FATA was being converted and merged, at that time, I was one of the people who was in many seminars complaining, don't do it. And why I was saying that was because the way that it was being done was wrong. Nobody was asked in FATA. There was no referendum. There was nobody the people, the seven agencies were never asked. It was just something which was press ganged, It was done by force. So there is a procedure which had to have been followed. The governor's secretary should have been there. There could have been a process in which funding could have been done. It's not yet been done, the funding. The road had to be built. The police stations had to be established. The judicial system had to come up. And it would take about 4 or 5 years to gradually, evolve into a settled area. But they just merged it and hoped that everything would be all right. And it was writing on the wall that this is going to happen. So there are a lot of people who are upset. There are a lot of things which I don't want to get into now because it will take too long in this interview. Otherwise, there are tribal issues like Nikat, the quota systems, etc., between tribes, which they don't understand why they're gone. So there's a lot of grievance. Now that grievance turns into the PDM or it turns into something else, the PTN, and all kinds of movements. Anybody can exploit it. It can become violent, and you have this kind of an issue spread. But it is naturally a conflict we have to deal with. You can't say it's not our war and walk away from it and let them rule everything. Yeah, I agree that you see there are two issues. One issue is what is being done by Afghanistan and India from Afghanistan, and the other is what is happening in Pakistan. When you talk about what's happening in Pakistan, it has a bias towards a political solution. A political solution would mean involving the people, the local government, reaching out, getting some mushar that they call in these areas, the leaders who can bring about some kind of a resolution to whatever grievance there are before it grows into something big. Those exploiting it from Afghanistan, from hostile camps, etc., well, they have to be dealt with kinetically. There is no two ways about it. And we can meet with the Afghan government, try and negotiate. We've gone through that process. We went in Qatar, we went to Turkey, we did it 7, 8 times, and nothing seems to work. So then, when nothing seems to work, then you do whatever you can, and what we can do is all kinetic. Yeah, well, whoever is responsible for bringing in the hybrid, so-called hybrid, I don't agree with labels. Government is government, whatever kind of government you have, but whoever has brought this government in should take responsibility. You can't just very well stand up on TV and say, well, the system has failed. You brought the system, so you're part of the system. It's going to be resolved by the people. It cannot be resolved by any other. If you're going to have a Form 47 government sitting there, not a single person who's a representative of the people, how are you going to resolve these problems? It's such an obvious thing. I mean, it's so obvious, it's like daylight. So just get the people who represent the locals, and they'll resolve the issue instead of throwing them into jail. Well, General Zia had the referendum. He wrote down that if you believe in God and you believe in religion, then you voted for me for the next 7 years. So if we have these kind of arguments, and if anybody gets up and makes a critical statement and then he becomes anti-state, then there's no room for improvement or development in this country. You are doomed to failure.